From WQAD News 8, my name is Joe McCoy, and you are listening to Sports with the Real McCoy. Today, we're going to have a breakdown of the 2023 Chicago Bears NFL Draft. What I liked, what maybe I didn't like, which there really wasn't much I didn't like. Also, we'll get into what it was like for me being down there in Kansas City, what an amazing experience it was to get to go and cover the NFL Draft in person and meet the players and the other media personnel that was there. But as a Bears fan, I think we got to be overall very happy with how this draft turned out. I think that Ryan Poles addressed a lot of needs that we needed to address. I thought he took, good players with good value at the spots they were drafted, and that he's kind of building this team from the inside out, which they have said they needed to do. And I think it was a very solid draft. So let's start with round one, the first pick they had. They ended up selecting Darnell Wright, the right tackle out of Tennessee, 10th overall. So the Bears initially had that 9th overall pick. They traded back with the Eagles just one spot from 9 to 10. They got an extra 4th round pick next year, and they end up going with Darnell Wright. Now, this one stung a little bit in the moment for me. I got to be honest, because I was a fan. I was someone who wanted the Bears to draft Jalen Carter. I thought the talent was worth the risk of him potentially turning out to be a bust because of the off the field issues, because there's been stuff about, maybe his work ethic isn't the best. He just relies on his talent, blah, blah, blah. I thought Jalen Carter was worth the risk, but I understand why the Bears didn't. And I understand with the culture they are trying to build here, why they felt that Jalen Carter did not fit that. So it was obvious the Bears came into the draft with Jalen Carter off of their board. If he was on their board, he would have been taken at 9. And I'm fine with them trading back to 10 just to accumulate. I mean, it's basically a free draft pick. A lot of people were giving Ryan Poles crap for only getting a 4th round pick next year, but it's basically a free 4th round pick. My guess is the Eagles and other teams knew the Bears were trying to move back a spot or so. And the Eagles, again, they were just kind of giving us a free pick just to move up to 9 to ensure that they got Jalen Carter. So in my mind, yes, the value is low, but I'd rather have a 4th rounder next year than no additional pick at all. So I think this was a really good pick, though. The Bears, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus came out in their press conference and said that Darnell Wright was their tackle number 1 on the board. A lot of people like Chris Sims from NBC and other analysts and experts have Darnell Wright as their tackle 1. And I think what's so intriguing about Darnell Wright is the tape against the elite competition. His tape against Will Anderson and Brian Brzee. Will Anderson, who was the best defensive player in this draft, who ended up going 3 overall. Brian Brzee ended up going, I think, 29th overall to the Saints. A really, really good defensive tackle from Clemson. Darnell Wright handled both of them extremely well. Will Anderson said that Darnell Wright was the best tackle he faced in college football. And to hear that from a guy like Will Anderson, who I think is going to be the next Von Miller, I think Will Anderson is a total stud and is going to be multi-year Pro Bowler in this league. To hear him say that Darnell Wright was the best tackle he went against, and to watch the tape of Darnell Wright versus Will Anderson, and I don't think Darnell Wright lost a rep to Will Anderson. It was an incredible performance by Darnell Wright. But he's 21 years old, 6'6", 335 pounds, a huge dude. And I think this was a great pick. It was a safe pick in terms of Jalen Carter would have been the prize. You're taking a risk on the guy who, if he turns out to be great, could be a Hall of Famer. But also, you don't like some of the character issues. You're worried that he doesn't have the work ethic and fit your culture. So I think this was a tremendous pick for Ryan Poles. Get that right tackle to protect Fields. And also, one thing I like about this is Braxton Jones doesn't have to move from left tackle, to right tackle, because a lot of people wanted the Bears to draft Paris Johnson, who ended up going 6th overall to the Cardinals. But if they would have done that, Paris Johnson would have been moved to the left side, most likely. Now you got Braxton Jones having to learn a new position. Even though they're similar, you still got to learn new position, new footwork at right tackle. So I'm happy that Braxton Jones gets another year at left tackle, another year to develop where he's comfortable at. And Darnell Wright, who was a star in college at right tackle, my guess is going to be the plug-and-play right tackle for the Bears. So give it very solid. I think this is an A pick. I mean, yes, as a fan, it would have been really exciting to get Jalen Carter, but I think this was Ryan Poles didn't overthink this pick. It was exactly who it should have been. And then next in the second round, picked 53 overall, the Bears went with Gervon Dexter, the defensive tackle from Florida. Again, building that trenches. This was clearly evident in this draft that the Bears needed to build the trenches. 3 of their first 4 picks were on either the offensive and defensive line. And I think Gervon Dexter could be a really good piece. He has some elite flashes. And that was one thing that caught my eye the most in Ryan Poles' press conference. Out of everything he said after the draft, he said with these defensive tackles, with Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens, from South Carolina, the other defensive tackle who we got, he said he was grading the flashes because both of these guys, their flashes are the best in this draft. And Ryan Poles is relying on the coaching staff and Matt Eberflus and the defensive line coaches to make those flashes more consistent with these players. The players they show on tape that they can have some elite reps and be some of the best defensive tackles in all of college football. It's a matter of doing it consistently. So one of the weirdest things about Gervon Dexter is that he is extremely slow off the ball. Like, he could be a full second before he starts moving. But I really think more of this is coaching and how it was the coaching at Florida versus him, for some odd reason, not being able to time a snap at all, because Florida wanted him to do a lot of mirroring, where, the ball is snapped. He kind of waits and sees where the ball's going. Okay, is it going to the running back? What hole is this going to? Is it a drop back pass? And then he would go and pass rush or try to stuff the run. So I think that's a super easy thing that the coaches can fix. And I think that he has the potential to be a really, really good player. He's probably going to be the one technique in this defense or the nose tackle. My guess is Zach Pickens, again, who we'll talk about more later, is going to be the 3 technique. But these two draftings really kind of remind me of Eddie Goldman and Akeem Hicks, 2 guys who have those 2 mammoth guys in the middle. And especially Gervon Dexter, he really reminds me of Akeem Hicks because of the juice that he plays with. Every single play this guy makes, he's getting up, he's celebrating, he's pounding his chest, he's, hyping up the team. I love players like that. I mean, Bears players adored Akeem Hicks because he was just like the juice to the entire defense. He's in the middle. Every time he hits the quarterback, every time he stuffs the run, he's pounding his chest. He's letting them know that he's stronger and bigger than they are. And that's what Gervon Dexter does. And I think it's some swagger that this defense needed. And I loved watching that while I was watching Gervon Dexter tape. Also, another huge dude, 6'6", 313 pounds, also only 21 years old. So 2 really young guys with our first 2 picks. And I think that height is really going to help at the line of scrimmage. It's going to help bat down balls. It's going to help affect the QB's line of sight. You hope that leads to tip balls that can lead to an interception. You hope that the QB can't see as well. Maybe it leads to an overthrow and an interception. So I think Gervon Dexter, another very solid pick by Ryan Poles. And then the second round, they traded up to draft cornerback Tyrique Stevenson from Miami. 6 foot, 198 pounds, 22 years old, a big outside corner who plays very physical, also is not afraid to come up and make tackles against the run. Tyrique Stevenson is a very good player. He transferred from Georgia to Miami to be closer to his family. Also, when he was at Georgia, they were playing him in kind of this nickel star position role, which is not what he wanted to be playing. So he transferred to Miami to take care of family, also to get more playing time, play that outside corner that he's good at. And I think he's going to be probably plug and play day 1 starter to be opposite of Jalen Johnson in the cornerback room. So he's really good against press man coverage. Again, super physical at the line, sometimes a bit too physical. That's something he's going to need to work on and be coached up on so he doesn't draw a lot of penalties. But the Bears were a top 10 team in terms of least penalized teams last year, and Eberflus has made it such a priority since day 1 to limit the penalties. So I'm sure that's something that the defensive coaches, the defensive back coaches will help Tyrique Stevenson and coach him up on that, just to, we want you playing physical. We want you being aggressive. That's what makes a great corner. But you got to be careful with your hands. You got to know where to place them. You can't be too grabby or you're going to get called for PI in this league. But the Bears traded up for Tyrique Stevenson. They wanted to trade up a few spots to make sure that they got their guys. So they traded a 5th round pick with the Eagles to come up to 56 to get him. The Bears ended up recuperating that 5th round pick later in the draft, which we'll get to. But I think this is another really solid pick. I said in the first 4 picks of the draft, I wanted the Bears to go either 2 offensive linemen and 2 defensive linemen, or an offensive lineman, 2 defensive linemen, and a corner. And that's exactly what they did. So again, I think Tyrique Stevenson, plug and play, opposite corner Jalen Johnson, gives us desperately the cornerback depth that we needed. As much as I think Kindle Vildor is a fine corner in this league, I think he's better as your team's 4th corner, or, a solid backup that the dude can play, but you don't want Kyler Gordon day in and day out being one of your starting cornerbacks. So hopefully, all of these guys that I'm talking about, yes, we all think they're going to be good players. Not hopefully all of these guys will be great. Most likely they're not. Not every single player is going to turn out to be a really, really good NFL player. But on paper, I think Ryan Poles, with these first 3 picks, really hit a home run. I think he addressed three of the biggest needs on the team were right tackle, defensive line, and cornerback. And those are the first 3 picks in the draft. So you can't really ask more from your GM. Tyrique Stevenson, a player that many had going higher than 56 overall. People had him as an early second-round pick. So I think this was tremendous value. I'm happy Ryan Poles traded up just a little bit to make sure that they got their guy, because you don't want the guy getting taken a spot or 2 before, and now you're kind of reaching on a guy that you didn't really love. And now to kick off the 3rd round, the Bears at pick 64 drafted Zach Pickens, another defensive tackle from South Carolina. And this is who I think will most likely be Matt Eberflus's 3 technique. The guy's 6'4", 305 pounds, 23 years old, had 7.5 sacks in his 43 college game career. Another guy who is better against the run, like Gervon Dexter. These guys are more touted as run defenders than pass rushers in terms of getting sacks, but they both have shown flashes in the pass rushing game that they can get sacks. It's just a matter of getting coached up properly, developing that pass rushing technique, which again, I love that Ryan Poles is putting the faith in his coaches. He's not, he believes in his staff. This is a unified effort. I'm going to bring in the guys that I think show potential, that have potential to be really, really good players. I need you guys as coaches to build them and help them get to that level. One thing that Poles and Eberflus talked a lot about in their press conference was really pushing the pocket, but not only from the outside, but from the inside out, and having those defensive tackles that can get that push up the middle. That way, the quarterback is closer to the defensive ends, gives the defensive ends a shorter path to the quarterback. And we all know how important these defensive linemen, especially these 3 techniques and these D tackles, are for Matt Eberflus's defense. He gets 2 good defensive tackles in the first 64 picks. He's got to be a happy camper on the defensive side of the ball. Now, are we still probably going to be lacking pass rush? Yes. Zach Pickens and Gervon Dexter, as much as I really like these picks, they're probably, maybe they're probably rotational guys at the start of the year. It's a ton to ask for 2 second-round picks to come in and be day 1 defensive tackle starters and, be great players. But I think they're probably going to start as rotational guys. And these are players that I really think Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are looking at for, be fine depth players this year, be, good rotational guys. Maybe towards the end of the year, you really are in a good starting role. But for that 2nd year and 3rd year with those years of development, 2 guys that can turn into extremely good defensive tackles in this league and can grow together since they were drafted in the same class. So our run defense should be much, much better this year. Our run defense was putrid last year. It was horrible. We were worse than last in the league in sacks, and I think we were 2nd to last in run defense. The Bears' defensive line was god-awful. But our run defense should be much better with some guys we brought in. We brought in Andrew Billings, who's a really good run stuffer from the Raiders. We still got Justin Jones. We got a couple of other pieces. And now you add 2 rookies who have the potential to be really good. This run defense, it's not going to be great, but as long as it can be somewhat respectable, that's going to help out the team a lot, especially because now we have an amazing linebacking core of Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, also Jack Sanborn and Penei Sewell, or not Penei Sewell, excuse me, his brother, Noah Sewell, who the Bears drafted, who we'll talk about later in this video. But the Bears linebacking core is going to be a top 5 linebacking core. And having a good defensive line will allow those linebackers to play more free, be able to hit the holes instead of already having linemen, blocking them on the second lane of attack. So these are good picks, more developmental guys, but guys that show flashes and really could develop into very good players in this league. And now getting to the 4th round, one of my favorite draft picks that the Bears had, Roschon Johnson, the running back out of Texas. He was picked 115th overall. The guy is 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's 22 years old. And yes, this guy was playing behind Bijan Robinson, who's the best running back to come out of college football in the past 6 years, had Saquon Barkley. But do not get it twisted. This guy is an extremely good running back. Came into Texas as a quarterback. He was one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the entire country in high school. Comes into Texas. They need him to play running back. He puts on a bunch of weight and muscle, switches over to running back. They bring in Bijan, who we all know what Bijan turned into, ended up being the 8th overall pick to the Atlanta Falcons in this draft. Roschon becomes his backup. But if Bijan was not at Texas, Roschon would have been probably a 1,100, 1,500 yard runner. I mean, he's that good of a player. And I think that he has the potential to be a really good running back in the NFL. He runs hard. He runs fast. He's a break tackle machine. He's agile. I mean, he is my prototypical running back for what I love. I like my running backs a little bit bigger. I love Tyrique when he was on the Bears, kind of what he brought. But in general, for my mainstay, bell cow running back, I love a guy who's bigger. And that's what Roschon is. Again, 6 foot, 220, a guy who is faster than many people give him credit for. I mean, I saw many plays where Roschon Johnson is running away from defenders. I feel like people kind of touted him as, like an average speed guy, but I at least felt like from watching the tape that he was faster than David Montgomery was. That was always my only drawback of David Montgomery, is he never was going to, break away and take a 70-yarder to the house. It felt like even if he had a 40-yard rush, he always got caught at the end before the end zone. But I think Roschon Johnson has that speed to be a big play waiting to happen. And also, man, this guy I think is going to be really good. You can hear it in my voice, but he's also a tremendous leader. And that's not me saying that. That's from the coaches at Texas saying that. The head coach, the Longhorn, said that Bijan is the star. We all know he's the star and, going to be the first running back in this draft. But that Roschon Johnson was the leader in that team. And, I love Bijan. He's going to be an incredible player, great for the Falcons. But would you rather have Bijan Robinson at 8 overall, or Roschon Johnson, who's a tremendous leader, tremendous person, and could be very good as well in the 4th round? I personally would rather have Roschon Johnson in the 4th round. And not only is he a good runner and a good pass catcher out of the backfield, he also is the best pass blocker in the entire draft. Louis Riddick on ESPN said Roschon Johnson was one of the best pass blockers he has ever watched coming out of college. That is a guy who has been in NFL media and was an NFL player for a long time. And for him to say that Roschon Johnson is the best pass blocking running back he's ever watched on tape, I mean, not much needs to be said after that. So that is another huge bonus for this guy. If the offensive line misses a block, hopefully Roschon Johnson's there and can come and clean it up. So I really believe that Roschon Johnson will be running back 1 by midseason. That's how good I think this guy can be. He also is a tremendous special teamer, just a great person, a great football player, who I think is going to be a stellar pickup for the Bears. And someone who Ryan Poles said in his press conference that he was shocked that Roschon Johnson was still there in the 4th round. So it was a steal on where they got him. And that 3-headed monster that the Bears now have at running back with Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman, and Roschon Johnson, I mean, that is a tremendous running back trio. All 3 of those guys with kind of similar skill sets, kind of a bit different. Also, they have Travis Homer, who's probably going to be a special teamer, but another really good pass blocking running back. But you talk about they can just rotate those guys in and out and in and out. And it comes to November, December, January. You got Donta Foreman and Roschon Johnson being kind of your heavy backs. You throw in Khalil Herbert with that shiftiness, agility. This running attack with Justin Fields. Watch out. Another one of my favorite draft picks that the Bears had in the 4th round again was wide receiver Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati. Now, Scott is an absolute burner. The guy is straight line speed for days. Had 14 touchdowns in the past 2 seasons, so was productive at Cincinnati. And one thing that I found really interesting is a lot of people before the draft had his player comp to Darnell Mooney. Now, I think all Bears fans would agree that getting another Darnell Mooney on this team would be wonderful. Everyone loves Darnell Mooney. He's a tremendous receiver. I do think Darnell Mooney was a little bit of a better route runner coming out of college than Tyler Scott is, but Tyler Scott has better speed than Darnell Mooney. Tyler Scott, I think, ran in the mid 4.3s at the combine, which isn't like, I mean, it's fast, of course, don't get me wrong. It's not like, holy crap, this guy needs to go in the 1st round fast. But the speed he plays with, he's clearly faster than Darnell Mooney. I mean, this guy can take a slant and split defenders and boof, 70 yards to the house. So I think this is going to be a tremendous addition to our wide receiver room. The guy's 5'11", 180 pounds, 21 years old. But I really think Scott is probably going to end up being the wide receiver 4. So you got DJ Moore, who has, this is a crazy stat that I saw today. DJ Moore is 5th highest in career yards before the age of 26 in NFL history. 5th highest. And Bears fans or fans across the NFL are acting like DJ Moore is not an elite receiver. The dude only produces, and he's had such bad quarterback play his entire career. Now, hopefully, he becomes wide receiver one, or he will be wide receiver one. Hopefully, Justin Fields takes that step. And now he's got Justin Fields to work with for the next 5 years. But the wide receiver core of DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, and then you got Tyler Scott, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Bayless Jones. That's my guess. Those are the 6 that are going to make this team. That's a really solid wide receiver core. I think that each guy does similar things, but things differently. You got Claypool to be that deep threat jump ball guy, the big body, go up, throw it up to him. You got DJ Moore, who's the do-it-all guy. I mean, just all 3 levels. DJ Moore is a clinic of a route runner. Then you got Darnell Mooney, another guy who kind of can do it all, but mostly will operate out of the slot. And now you got Tyler Scott, a speed burner who can play slot or outside. Needs to work on his hands a little bit, needs to work on his route running. There's a reason he was a 4th-round pick. I'm not trying to make it sound like this guy, is a 1st-round pick talent. He's got things to work on, but I just think that he's going to be a big boost to this offense with his speed, really help stretch that field, allow DJ Moore to work, the underneath stuff, the middle of the field, Darnell Mooney as well. So I think this wide receiver room has really, really good depth to it. And now you got Equanimeous St. Brown, who was our last year. Equanimeous St. Brown was our wide receiver 2 to start the season. Think of that. And now he's most likely going to be our wide receiver 5. That is tremendous job by Ryan Poles, bringing in talent into that room, bringing competition into it for those spots. Now a guy like Bayless Jones, he's got work to do. I think Bayless can still carve out a nice role on this team on special teams as a really good returner. Also, I think Bayless can be a good gadget guy. He showed some flashes towards the end of the year on deep balls and end arounds and stuff like that. But, if you want to get playing time in this wide receiver room, you're going to have to work for it. There's no more, Dante Pettis being wide receiver 2 or 3 or Equanimeous St. Brown being wide receiver 2. There are legit NFL wide receivers in this room that are going to drastically help Justin Fields. And I think Tyler Scott, if he develops properly, could be, again, people are comparing him to Darnell Mooney. We'll see if he turns out to be that good, but I think it was a really good pick by Ryan Poles. Also, one thing I loved about Tyler Scott, a little side note, when he got drafted, he said, and it was clear in his voice that he meant this. He wasn't just saying this for the camera. He said that the Bears were the one team that he wanted to draft to. It was exactly the spot that he wanted to go. And I think getting a guy like that who's that excited to be there, of course, every player is excited to be drafted, no matter what team they go to. But to get drafted to the team, whether it's like your hometown team or the team that you adore, like the team that you just in the draft process really want to go to, I think that just gives you a little bit more fire because you just want to be there. You want to work with that quarterback. You want to work with those coaches. So I love seeing that out of Tyler Scott. And next, the Bears got Noah Sewell, linebacker from Oregon, pick 148. Many of you may know Penei Sewell, the Pro Bowl right tackle for the Detroit Lions. This is his brother. And this is a really interesting pick. Do I think linebacker? Did I think the Bears were going to draft a linebacker? No, I did not, because I think our linebacking room is really good, as I already talked about, with Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards. You got Jack Sanborn as now linebacker 3. But Noah Sewell, coming into the 2020 season, this past season, was a projected 1st-round pick. Everyone had him slated as the best linebacker in college football. Again, 1st-round pick projected in 2023. He ends up not playing great this past year. He was kind of playing injured, just wasn't playing as well as he did in 2021. He ends up falling out all the way to the 5th round to the Bears, where they end up selecting him. But there's a lot of talent in this guy, and I'm always a fan of players that have football blood. And, of course, Penei Sewell, like I just said, one of the best right tackles in the NFL. Just when you got brothers and dads and nephews and uncles and everything in the NFL, I just always think those players turn out really well. So I think Noah Sewell, even though, did we really need him, quote unquote? No, but I think he could be, a solid player for this team. And when you're in the 5th, 6th, 7th round of the draft, you just got to go best player available. But Noah Sewell, he's a thumper. He does miss a lot of tackles because he always goes for the big hit. So that's something, again, coaches are going to have to working on that tackling technique. You can't always go for the knockout punch, just wrap them up, get the solid tackle and move on. But he does have very good vertical speed. He's also a really good blitzing linebacker, which is kind of what I believe the Bears are going to use him a lot as a rookie, because he really is not the best in coverage. He lacks side-to-side agility. He struggles to keep up with tight ends or receivers. And that's why we got Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Those two are both tremendous coverage linebackers. But Noah Sewell, I do think, is going to have a role on this defense. Again, as either a blitzer, or I could see them trying him off of the edge as like an edge rusher. The Bears, that's their biggest weakness on their team right now, is edge rusher. And Noah Sewell has the size to potentially rush from the edge. So if he doesn't crack the starting lineup on defense, or even if they don't have a package for him, he's still going to be a really solid special teamer. Again, the dude's really fast. He hits hard. And for the Bears, having him as their linebacker 4 right now, that's nuts. Last year, we had Roschon, of course, and then we traded him. But once Roschon was traded, our best linebacker was Nicholas Morrow, who is now on the Philadelphia Eagles. And then we had Jack Sanborn, of course. But now Jack Sanborn is our linebacker 3, competing with Noah Sewell for that third linebacker spot. And we got 2 guys in Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards who are just phenomenal football players. So that linebacking coach for the Bears, he is spoiled rotten right now. I mean, the Bears really have probably a top 5 linebacking core in the NFL, and I cannot wait to see these guys play together on Sunday. All right, the next 3 picks, I'm going to go through a little bit quicker. They drafted Terrell Smith, cornerback from Minnesota, pick 135. More good corner depth. Again, one of the positions the Bears were lacking the most in depth. So they get Tyrique Stevenson to most likely be a day 1 starter. They bring in Terrell Smith, again, to compete for that corner 4, corner 5 spot. Love it. A position you can never have enough depth at. Corners are injured a lot just because it's a very tough position to play. So loved that pick of Terrell Smith. Then we went Travis Bell, defensive tackle from Kent State at 218 in the 7th round. One thing, there's a couple actually interesting tidbits about Travis Bell. He was the first player ever drafted from Kent State, which is, congrats to him. That's an amazing, coming from a D2 program to be the first player ever drafted from that team. Hats off to him. But also, Ryan Poles said in his press conference that Bell was one of the most incredible human beings that he's ever been around, which a guy who interviews all these players, you could tell when Ryan Poles was saying this that it was genuine. So, again, character matters for this team. Eberflus and Poles have said that since day one, that it's not just about finding tremendous football players. It's about finding tremendous men who are going to be great in the locker room. And it sounds like Travis Bell is really going to fit that mold. Also, the guy loves football. He worked a full-time job in college. I can't remember what it was, but he was either at like a Target or a restaurant or something, would work a full-time job, come to practice in his work clothes, change into his football gear. And as Poles described it, football was like recess to him. He would just come, have fun. It's just what he loved to do. And that's another thing that Poles and Eberflus have stated many times, that they want guys in the building that simply love football. That's all they do. That's all they eat, sleep, breathe, drink is football. And, guys who love football that much, they will find a way to make their NFL career work. So, who knows what he's going to end up being. He's a 7th round defensive tackle, but you never know. Again, if you love football and you really are committed to it, if you outwork the guy next to you, you'll make a spot for yourself in the NFL. And then our final pick in the draft was Kendall Williamson, a safety from Stanford, pick 258. He's a good box safety, also good against the run, something that I've realized that Poles and Eberflus have really targeted in defensive backs as guys who are really good tacklers. Tyrique Stevenson, as I mentioned earlier, really physical corner, really good against the run. Kendall Williams, same thing here. He's a willing tackler, another big hitter. And I think if he, develops properly, he could end up being a good backup for Jaquan Brisker. Very similar play styles, both long, rangy safeties who love to play in the box, love to lay the hit stick. So, we'll see what he turns out to. Hopefully he's a good special teamer as a rookie and, turns into a solid depth piece behind Brisker. But those were all the picks, 10 picks for the Bears. It's been such a long time since the Bears have had this many picks. And you can see Ryan Poles is just building up those picks for the future, building them up. I love the way that he is building this team. Just a couple of few more things I want to mention on this draft, a couple of tidbits that were quite interesting. It is so obvious, and it's not like they're trying to hide it, but what Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles look for in players. They look for guys who are big, fast, agile, flexible. They want the best athletes in the building. And when you look at their RAS scores, which for those who don't know what RAS scores are, they're basically like the test of athleticism. It's a bunch of all these numbers and tests all put together into one score. It's out of 10. And every single player that the Chicago Bears drafted in the 2023 draft either had an elite RAS score as basically as high as it gets, or a very good RAS score. All of them are either in the high 9s or in the high 8s. That is something that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are making apparent on this team. If you are not a good athlete, do not come to the Chicago Bears. You are not gonna, pan out well. And that is, again, part of them relying on coaching. They want these good athletes in the building that the coaches can then teach how to play football properly. And I love that approach, because you can't teach someone to run fast. You can't teach someone to be 6'6", 330 pounds and flexible and agile and quick on his feet. If you don't have that, you just simply don't have it. And it was pretty shocking when those RAS numbers came out for every single draft pick, and they all were either in that elite or very good range, because it's obvious that those are the players that the Bears are looking for on this team. So I loved the draft. Also with this draft, one thing I forgot to mention is you have to factor in the trade. We initially were slated to pick first overall. You might as well throw DJ Moore into this draft, because we traded number 1 overall to get to number 9. We got DJ Moore, first round pick next year, second round pick the year after, a second round pick this year. And then we moved from 9 to 10 to acquire another 4th rounder next year. So not only did we acquire DJ Moore, a first and a second this year, but we also acquired a first rounder and a 4th rounder next year. So Ryan Poles is building this thing long-term. I love to see it. It cannot be understated enough that he is building this roster properly. So I would give the Bears draft, I think if you just base it off of the 10 players, I would probably give it a solid B+, A-. If you base it off of including the trade with DJ Moore and acquiring all of this draft capital, this is a solid A draft. They addressed needs. They got athletes. They filled positions that they needed to fill to help their quarterback and Justin Fields, getting that extra running back, getting that extra receiver, getting him the right tackle that we've so desperately needed. And then on the defensive side, yes, we're still lacking edge rusher. I expect them to go out and sign an edge rusher in free agency. The Bears still have $30 million to sign players, which is by far the highest in the NFL. So I would expect the Bears to go out and sign a defensive end to kind of bring more pass rush to this team. But Ryan Poles, you did a great job, man. A really, really good job. So we all will see. We can't grade any of this right now properly, because we've never seen these people step on an NFL football field. But on paper, I think Ryan Poles did a tremendous job. So thank you guys so much for listening. I know this was a little bit of a longer episode, but when the Bears have 10 draft picks, you got to break them all down. But there's going to be so much to talk on as this offseason develops. The NFL schedule is supposed to come out on May 11th. I don't think that is a confirmed date, but I saw reports from Adam Schefter that is the date that the NFL is aiming for. So that's less than 8 days away from when the NFL schedule could be coming out. So we're gonna have so much more on the Bears. I'm gonna hopefully get Sean and Zach Pearson, the other Bears reporters that I have, back onto the show to go over the draft with them, what they liked, what they didn't like. And also I've been making some other connections with guys that I'm going to hopefully be able to get on the show as guests. So thank you guys so much for listening. It was an incredible time being in Kansas City, being there, covering the draft. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for listening.